I don't want to overreact to him going to this baseball game, but I think that's a terrible look for Kawhi because he didn't go to any of the Spurs playoff games. To not go to a Spurs, even their home playoff games, even the home playoff games right after the head coach's wife tragically passes away. To not go ahead, see.
The only thing about that part is I know Kawhi was in communication with Coach Pop, and they had Kawhi was going to come back if he was going to coach, but he knew that the coach wasn't going to come back, so that's when he decided to stay away. It was kind of agreed upon that he would continue to do his rehab.
And I had heard that as well, that if after the death of Pop's wife, that he was going to coach.
He was in communications with Coach Popovich.
And I understand that part of it. But to not show up to one of those playoff games, even when the coach isn't going to be there, maybe even more of a reason to show up as a team leader, as the best guy on the team, when your season's on the line, even if you're not going to play, when you obviously can travel, that to me is, whether you agree or disagree with the decision, that to me is all the proof I need that he has mentally moved on from the Spurs as being a member of that basketball team.
Yeah, I think it's crazy, though, he can't go to the Dodgers game. If you're in Los Angeles, why can't I go to a sporting event? Why can't I go see the Dodgers play? Well, what am I supposed to do? Not do anything this summer because I didn't go to the playoff games? I'm not supposed to go to no sporting event when I would normally, in my routine, I would go to some baseball games. I would potentially go to other NBA playoff games. I don't think just because I missed the season, a great portion of the season and the playoffs, I'm not going to go anywhere socially. That has nothing to do with my decision, do I want to be in San Antonio or not?
Listen, I'm not saying he can't go to the games. What I am saying is the only, I thought, plausible rationale that could square the circle of Kawhi wants to be with the Spurs and Kawhi isn't at these playoff games is the rehab in New York is so intensive he has to stay there. And if he is just chilling in Los Angeles, I'm not judging him for going to the game. It's just, to me, further evidence that he has decided, I'm not on the Spurs anymore.
Well, the evidence has been there. It's just a matter of when people wanted to look at it or not. So now, because he's going to a baseball game, you're like, wow.
Well, I've been saying that I thought he was going. I just think it's further evidence of it. But go ahead.
Yeah, listen, I get a little upset when people in sports are people who are famous that now they can't do other stuff that normal people can do. If a normal person can go to a baseball game, well, damn, I can go to a baseball game. Kawhi going to a baseball game in L.A., it's not a bad look for him, and it's not sending some type of message that he's gone from San Antonio or not, all right? Their relationship and what happened, him being misdiagnosed by San Antonio, all right, that's not going to go away. All right, they're not going to be able to change that anytime soon.
What do you think is going to happen next year? Do you still, I know you have gone sort of back and forth on whether he comes back or not. So him going to a Dodgers game, none of that factors into where you are with where Kawhi ends up next year.
Okay, first, I have not gone back and forth as far as is Kawhi going to stay in San Antonio or is he going to leave? The potential of him leaving San Antonio, that's real, all right? That's a real thing. Kawhi being upset at the management there at San Antonio, that's a real thing. People in Kawhi's group that want him to leave San Antonio, that's a real thing. That got nothing to do with Cris Carter.
Sure.
Now, I just know it's hard to turn down that max contract.
They can offer him, so the audience understands, they can offer him $219 million. No other team can offer more than around $140 million. It is a drastic sum of money he would have to turn down. And that's why the misdiagnosis part of this has to be part of the math you do. Because if the rationale or the thought initially was Kawhi wants to leave San Antonio so he can get a richer shoe deal.
No, that wasn't. He would have never, if he wouldn't have been injured, he would have never approached ever leaving. That thought wouldn't have come in his head.
Okay, so that's critical that people understand because you cannot make up, Kawhi Leonard cannot make up the money. If it's about a shoe deal, that means it's about money. And no shoe deal is going to make up the money that he would be leaving on the table by leaving San Antonio. It would have to be about more than that. Tell me if you think this is fair. Not just a misdiagnosis, but then a pressure to come back and play. some of the things Parker and Ginobili said that our friend Steven Jackson thinks they would only say with the consent from Greg Popovich, maybe an unfair representation in Kawhi's eyes of what he was really going through?
I think it has a big deal to do, zero to do with the players, all right? Because they're not going to be around there. They're not players that are part of San Antonio's future. Now, thinking that Kawhi took some message, that it was an indirect message from Popovich, I don't believe Kawhi is looking at it that way. But it's a real situation. Man, how many superstars, am I going to be able to get another superstar to be able to come to San Antonio? That's real. And I believe that and the injury led to Kawhi believe, is this the best place for my basketball future, which led us to where we are right now.
If it's about the money, if this whole thing was about money, that's where you're going to get the most money, is by staying in San Antonio. He has shown in my opinion, he has shown zero signs of committing to San Antonio, of wanting to be on this Spurs team, of wanting to play for the Spurs.
And when it comes to the max contract and the money, it should be noted, because of the way things have gone, I'm not as certain that it's a foregone conclusion that they offer him the full max contract, that they even put that in front of you. You also have to keep in mind the owners.
If they do that, then he's definitely going to leave.
But you got to keep in mind this part of it, and no one's talked about this. The owner of the Spurs and his wife got a divorce. And I bring that up because the financial ramifications of that, as the Peter Holt, and I think it's Juliana Holt, she's now running, it's an odd situation there. And we've seen this in sports before, where there's a divorce at the ownership level, what that does for the individual finances. A team like San Antonio that's not in a super lucrative market.
The team is concerned about the difference in that 70 to 80 million they would have to pay. So the divorce might play a role. So it's not just Kawhi, it's also the organization. But if the organization decides to do that, divorce or no divorce, they need Kawhi. They need to offer him the max. If they don't, there's a great probability he won't be there.
Does LeBron deserve blame for what's happening to him, or is he doing what he wants to do? Play basketball, make the money I deserve to play it and I've earned, and then make my decision based on what I signed.
I have tremendous respect for David Griffin. I don't know David Griffin personally, but we've developed something of like an internet camaraderie, if you will. I think he did a great job in Cleveland. I think he's going to do a great job with his next GM job. And I think he's done a great job on television, podcast, the whole thing. I think he's a little mistaken here. LeBron has not always signed one-year deals. And when LeBron makes his decision this offseason, I would bet a lot of money he does not sign one-year deals. The reason he has signed one-year deals in Cleveland this time around is because he does not trust that owner. And he should not trust that owner. The proof is David Griffin not being there. What do I mean? LeBron signed a one-year deal his first year back in Cleveland and then put pressure on the organization to do what they needed to do. They win a championship. He, after the championship, signs a 2-year deal. And what does the owner do the first summer that LeBron does not have freedom of movement? Doesn't bring back David Griffin. Trades Kyrie Irving despite LeBron not wanting him to. Objects and complains about where they are luxury tax-wise. So LeBron has no reason to give any faith to Dan Gilbert, and LeBron owes Dan Gilbert nothing. LeBron has helped make Dan Gilbert over $1 billion when he ends up selling this team. So the idea that LeBron should be concerned about, can we have a 40-yard view of this thing as opposed to a 5-yard view of this thing? Of course he shouldn't. The one time LeBron has removed the leverage, the owner didn't bring back the GM and traded away the second-best player, both against LeBron's wishes. So, of course, LeBron's right for signing one-year deals in Cleveland. I don't think he didn't do that in Miami, and I don't think he'll do that at his next spot.
Yeah, with LeBron delivering one championship to Cleveland, anything he decided to do is not wrong. Or he already gave him what he promised he was going to give him, a championship. So what? They got a little bit less flexibility on the cap. But the things that Nick said, they're true. All these things happen. And to me, I don't know what Dan Gilbert was thinking, but to me, when LeBron went back home, to me, it wasn't home forever. It was home for now. And it is right. LeBron should try to win championships. He should never try to position himself where it's about the future. LeBron's legacy is based on how many championship trophies can he hold. And he did what was in the best interest of his career in coming back to Cleveland, something he didn't have to do. Now, I'm just going to tell you, There's a lot of organizations that would love to have the problems Cleveland had the last 4 years.
Of course. Every organization except the Warriors would trade places with Cleveland over these last few years. And we really should look at what happened in the one offseason. LeBron wasn't on a one-year deal. It's not only that David Griffin isn't brought back. It's not only that they trade Kyrie Irving against LeBron's wishes, but the trade that they make is one that looks towards the future instead of to right now. They take a lesser player in Isaiah Thomas compared to other offers they had because the Celtics attached a draft pick to it. If you can win a championship this year with LeBron James. We're seeing that right now. LeBron James at the peak of his powers. We think they have a very small chance of winning it because of the team around him. But if instead of getting Isaiah Thomas, Jay Crowder, and a draft pick, you had gotten a better return, you had gotten Paul George, they ended up saying they didn't want to trade for Paul George because Paul George wouldn't commit long term. Again, they only do that because LeBron couldn't hold their feet to the fire. Listen, guys, I'll leave. I'll leave right here and now.
But do you understand the second fold of it, what she's saying, which is when he does sign these one-term deals and he is making all that money, then there is no formula for sustainability. Then the next year that he leaves, you're sort of left with whatever the Cavs are going to be left with when LeBron leaves next year, which isn't much. Or are you saying it shouldn't matter and it shouldn't be LeBron's
I don't think certainly it's not LeBron's responsibility, but I don't think it should matter either.
And you're thinking teams would take that chance and have him for this
I also
year.
think that Danny, go ahead, C.
It's LeBron's responsibility to take care of his own business. He don't own the Cavs. He owns LeBron James, Inc. That's what he owns. And he delivered what any player wants to deliver to a franchise. And Nick mentioned it. Not only do you get the championship, but you get the cachet as far as LeBron James was with this organization, the overall evaluation of that organization. So there's no need to sit around and cry. To me, David Griffin, a little bit of this is about also trying to explain why he got fired.
Well, they didn't bring him back. Not why they just didn't renew his contract. But go ahead.
Call it what you want
Sure.
to. All right, when you got a contract and they end up hiring someone else in your job, call it what you want to. He's not working for the Cavs no more.
Right, and I think to me, it's very I feel like I know why David Griffin's not working for the Cavs anymore. Dan Gilbert, I'm going to go back to him, has never once retained a GM past his first contract, ever. He's never re-signed a GM. But he brings up Danny Ainge. Danny Ainge's done a great job. But Danny Ainge also can't do what Danny Ainge did. And by that, I mean this. You look at the teams that are built for long-term success. What built Boston for that was one of the greatest heists in league history with the Brooklyn Nets, that no one thought Brooklyn was going to be as bad as they were, as quick as they were. You had a Russian oligarch come in and buy the team, demand they compete for championships immediately. They mortgaged a decade of their future for Paul Pierce and Kevin Garnett. That's not duplicable or sustainable. You say, well, what about what Philly did? Okay, any organization can do what Philly did. Go through 5 years of hell. Not even trying to win, go do what Philly did. There aren't teams in the league that are simultaneously competing for rings and having a 10-year view of it. That doesn't exist. So I don't think this is a fair representation of the landscape. I also don't think it's a fair representation of what LeBron's been over the 15 years of his career. He signed 3 one-year deals in those 15 years total.
All right. Thanks for watching. Subscribe here to get the latest from the show. Also, be sure to check out more of the best clips from First Things First, or go watch a few segments from our other shows on FS1.